Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here. I feel I should start by saying that in a room full of data professionals, I am not a data professional. I'm not a data scientist. I'm not a data journalist, though I am a big fan of the genre. But what I really want to talk about is story, and specifically how we use story as a tool to communicate ideas with maximum effect, how we can use as a tool to communicate data with maximum effect. The word story and the word storytelling have become very popular buzzwords these days. Every company wants to tell the story of its brand. Every organization wants to tell the story of the service they provide. Everyone wants to drill down and find the story. And the reality of it is that not everything is a story. And the words story and storytelling get misused a lot, even by guys like me who have spent their careers trying to help people tell stories. Let me give you an example. A couple of months ago, I came across this statistic. 2015 road accident fatalities in Georgia were 17.8% higher than in 2014. This is an astounding statistic. People say, wow, that is a great story. No, this is not a story. This is a very important and very interesting piece of information around which a great story gets built. It is a phenomenon, it is an event, it is a statistic. The way we know that this is not a great story is because great stories are about transformation. And really great stories aren't just about transformation. Really great stories also change us. They transform us. They teach us about ourselves. They teach us about our place in the world. They teach us about how we move through our communities. They show us ideas that we can connect to. But they don't just show us ideas that we can connect to them. They don't just get us to understand these ideas. Great stories allow us to experience ideas. And this is a really, really important point in the world of data science. So where do data professionals fit into all of this? From a storytelling perspective, data has a very specific challenge. The challenge is not that the data is too dense. The challenge is not that the data is unclear. The challenge is that data is abstract. What do I mean by that? That means that for your average viewer, when they sit at home and are confronted with data, they have a lot of difficulty accessing data on an emotional level, on an experiential level. They understand it rationally, but the experience often doesn't reach them. This doesn't apply for the people in this room. We're all big fans of data, so we do experience data. But for Joe the plumber, who sits at home and is scrolling around the internet looking at his news site, data doesn't always present the most emotional connection, and that is a challenge. Let me give you an example. We have a major problem with gun violence in the United States. I'm from the United States. Very quickly, you can see on the left here in red is gun murders per 100,000 residents in America. On the right are the other 15 wealthiest countries on Earth. This is a serious problem. A lot of people debate what the reasons are, but one of the reasons is that there are just a lot of guns in America, about 300 million guns. One of the main reasons that people give for owning a gun is self-defense, home defense. They feel safer if they have a firearm at home. This is what that narrative looks like in a visual format. Angry man with a gun protecting his wife and child in the home, the castle that he built, as the bad guy comes through the door. The problem is that the data actually points to a different conclusion. In America, the people who keep guns in their home are actually nearly twice as likely to be victims of gun violence. This is an astounding statistic that contradicts the dominant narrative of gun ownership in America. The problem is that this has had almost no effect whatsoever on the debate over guns in the US. What's the reason for that? Some say, well, it's because gun owners don't believe the statistic. Others say, well, it has to do with education levels. Other people say, oh, it has to do with whether your father took you hunting as a child. Sure, maybe those are reasons, but there's a bigger reason behind all of those. And the bigger reason is that this statistic doesn't connect with people on an experiential level. Gun owners are very attached emotionally to their firearms. It is an experience for them, it's a very tangible experience where they can feel very safe, whether they are or not. No data statement that we can make, in just words anyway, can replicate that experience. And as long as we cannot replicate that experience, we will never be able to present a counter-narrative. And this problem will just get worse. So what do? The science is clear. People aren't connecting with that idea. So we have to find a way, in order for data to reach its potential, we have to find a way for people to be able to experience that data. It's not easy. Story is a tool that we can use to help with this. Let me give you another example. When I was a child, I'm behind. Experience the data. That's the main message. When I was a child, I ran into this piece of information, that there was more than a 95% chance that a large metal satellite will cause millions of deaths. Frankly, I didn't really care about this. Just like now, when I read this and you guys read this, this information has no value, really. We don't really connect with this. What made me care about this when I was a child was this guy, and this guy, and this woman, and this context, and this epic conflict. And all of a sudden, I cared a lot about that large metal satellite. Character, context, conflict, journey. These are the building blocks of strong storytelling. These are tools that we can use to push data into strong storytelling. Let me give you an example of what this looks like when we apply these basic tools just on a surface level to a data set. We're going to, with the help of Hans Rosling. Can we have sound on the video?
At the heart of my own work too. I teach global health. And I know having the data is not enough. I have to show it in ways people both enjoy and understand. Now, I'm going to try something I've never done before. Animating the data in real space, with a bit of technical assistance from the crew.
So, here we go. First, an axis for health. Life expectancy, from 25 years to 75 years. And down here, an axis for wealth, income per person, $400,000, $4,000, and $40,000. So down here is poor and sick, and up here is rich and healthy. Now, I'm going to show you the world 200 years ago, in 1810. Here come all the countries. Europe brown, Asia red, Middle East green, Africa south of Sahara blue, and the Americas yellow. And the size of the country bubbles show the size of the population. And in 1810, it was pretty crowded down there, wasn't it? All countries were sick and poor. Life expectancy were below 40 in all countries. And only UK and the Netherlands were slightly better off, but not much. And now, why start the world? The Industrial Revolution makes countries in Europe and elsewhere move away from the journey. West. But the colonized countries in Asia and Africa, they are stuck down there. And eventually, the Western countries get healthier and healthier. And now we slow down to show the impact of the First World War and the Spanish flu epidemic.
Okay, you get the idea. Conflict, character, context, conflict, journey. Applied on a very simple level to this data set. Sure, not every data set can be Star Wars. Of course not. But there is a lot we can do. This is difficult work. Building good stories out of data is difficult work. Building good nonfiction stories in general is difficult work. Getting audiences to connect with your ideas is very difficult work. But there are a few strategies that we can use to help with this. One, we have to innovate. Always innovate when it comes to presenting a story, an idea, or data. And this isn't always easy. In fact, it leads to a lot of tension, internal, with colleagues, all kinds of things, but you have to push. And there's a couple things that make this easier. One thing is, we have to cast a wide net for inspiration. It's important to remember that most breakthroughs happen at the intersection of disciplines, not inside disciplines. So you cast a wide net. If you're just hanging out with other data professionals, you need to cast a wider net. The other thing that helps a lot is that we need to become okay with taking risks, creative risk, when we push our work out there. And taking risk is also extremely difficult. This is one of my favorite illustrations about taking risk in creative work. Your comfort zone, where the magic happens. And this is very accurate. It's so uncomfortable to work outside your comfort zone. Your colleagues hate you. You hate yourself. You hate your work. And then in the end, you've created a baby. You've created something new. Number 2, find communication partners. The skills it takes to research interesting stories and the skills it takes to tell interesting stories are very different skill sets. Very few people have both skill sets and do them both well. Some do, most don't. This is very important. Number 3, simplify. Almost all great work is simple in its final design. It's a hot mess getting there. Under the hood, behind the scenes, it's terrible. It's incredibly complex. But when we finally present it, it's simple in its final design. So how do we do this? We train ourselves at every stage in the production process to ask, how can this be simpler? If you are working on a project and you feel that it is, even if you have a flashing sensation that it is boring, that's a really great sign that it is boring, because we are usually the last people to realize our own work is boring. Simplify, always. This next one, this is an example of not simplifying. If you created this, if you're in this room, do not raise your hand. This makes me want to scream. This is something that all industries need to be doing right now. Make science cool. Right now, there is a huge global war on science. There is a war on the scientific method, and this threatens all of our work. Take the time to invest in science. Take the time to invest in making science cool. Hire an intern. Spend time mentoring them. Take your kid to an observatory. Take your kid to a science fair. Build a science experiment with your child. This is something that's very important. It's not storytelling directly, but without this, we are all sunk. There is one more thing I want to talk about, and that is that story is an incredibly powerful tool, but it's not the only tool out there for getting people to experience your ideas. There's another tool. Does anybody know what that is? Poetry. Poetry is not going to help you reach big, broad audiences, but when it does reach people, it's much stronger. I want to see more poetry in data sets. We see this in data visualizations. You guys out there who do data visualizations, you know what I'm talking about. I think we can do it much more. Thank you very much.